you have a backup?
No, but he can use mine. I'll be taking.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Stu up.
The famous Stu up. That's what she meant.
No.
No, I don't need to.
He's gonna watch that one? Sure.
I haven't done any.
Are they,
They do now. It's
You're
just,
giving them
it was
extra
they have
cents?
their fiscal
You're not
year thing,
paying them?
you know, and I think the fiscal year was ended or began or whatever. That's supposed to go
Well, this is
over.
nice.
I was looking at should be next month.
Administrative leave, it's like if
That's
you
schedule issue in the next month, so it's a good thing. That's trying to be
I haven't
picky
been
though.
there for that
I
county.
don't want to go.
I think, yeah.
I've been over there once, but.
Military times read about this.
If you're only gonna go for like 3 or 4 weeks, it's really almost been worth it.
Well,
You need some activation time.
Yeah. One day, extra month.
That's.
Yeah, I hope we do more. Yeah. I know.
Alright, I mean, is that fair way to say it?
Yeah, right.
Extra time to do that.
And what we can offer you.
One job for every month of service, more than 12, but
Yeah,
36 consecutive months.
It's not,
Days
you know,
when you're
they're only buying.
4 days.
No.
So where are we?
No, I wish. First I was in Germany. Then I
Yeah.
was, my dad got very sick.
That's what you asked? You get an extra day too?
I don't know where you went. Where's your dad?
It's in the. Oh, right.
With that.
Is he hospitalized?
Absolutely.
No hard questions. Just giving you a heads up. Yes, there will be. No hard questions. Two months are actively seated. No, it's 20. Okay, so out of 36 months, if we deploy for
More than 8.
All right, because if you get 1 day off for every month past 12 out of 36.
Okay, this is your normal 2-minute warning to turn off all electrical devices that you may have, cell phones, pagers.
This morning, did you hear it? Something rang during the bag room.
I think they wanted me to check the bureau phone.
That's the thing.
I don't know how to turn them off, so.
No. What was ringing this morning?
I got stuck in traffic for 4 hours to get to Philadelphia.
Oh my God.
Tried to do it early and ran into the Baltimore and Washington.
Oh, double whammy.
Oh, boy. Okay, so
No. No, she doesn't. I'm just doing some mobile.
day off every month and then past the year. Days off.
This isn't like a year.
2 years. 4 days off.
It's not scheduled time.
I think, Stu, if I'm reading this right, if this is based on 36 consecutive months. If
For
you're-
active, 72 for reserve.
Right. And if you're deployed for 13 consecutive months, you get a day off. If you go 19, you get 2 days off. 25, 4.
No. I mean, you go 13, you get 1. 14, you get another one. 15, you get another one. 16, you get another one.
Right.
Right. 18 and
Up
then
to 18,
And you're getting 2 per month.
Oh,
Right.
2, 4, 6, like
And
that.
then 24, you get 4.
Yeah, on the.
Okay.
4 days will be better with more than 20.
Can can they cash these days in?
That'd be a good question.
Right, okay.
Thanks for the day off, Stu.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy, oh, boy.
Days off. 30 extra days, you're right. Do they, really, I guess they do, otherwise you're AWOL, but like jealously count your 30 days that you could work.
Well, this is, I mean, the last line in there, the admin absences are different from your regular leave
This means 4 days
that you
per
would
month
get.
and then 2 days
These
per
would be
month.
maintained by the command level.
All right, and the goal here is, we're going.
It's separate from your regular.
So you don't get like 31 days off when you come back with your regular leave.
Well, that's up to, the commander, however you spell your regular leave. Your regular leave, you can have up to 90 days and even more, if it was in combat, if it was built up over combat time. So this is separate, this is, separate from leave, and it's able to be handled at the command level.
It's okay.
Hmm?
Just give them more money, for God's sake.
That's a good question.
So does
that mean they're all
Well,
gonna get 3 days off?
not necessarily, because it's 15 out of 86. So theoretically, you should get, what, that's a good question, because I don't know.
You'll go to the
I
council.
don't.
What's the question?
The Army just, the rotation says
15 months.
15 months, so does that mean they automatically get?
This is the goal
Right.
of 12 months.
Well, that's
It's
for
not
12
even
time.
the goal anymore. It used to be the goal, or maybe it's still the goal, but not the current policy.
So this is contingent on how much time they spent dwell time,
Correct. This is,
not overseas time.
this is breaking dwell time.
Huh. So the guys with the 15 months don't get extra days.
Hello.
How are you all today?
Good.
Sure, both of you can. It's a little tall here, though. Well, thank you for being with us this afternoon. As I indicated earlier in the day, we have some experts that have been working on the issue of mobilization compensation. As you'll recall, back in January, early January, the Secretary indicated in his managing the force policy that one of the things that we were going to do was to establish a new program to compensate both active and reserve components that are required to mobilize earlier than the established policy goals. And today, actually late last week, the Secretary approved a plan, and today we have Mr. Michael Dominguez, who is the Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, and Major General Stephen Goldfein, who is the Vice Director of the Joint Staff, and they are here to outline for you the policy and take some questions with respect to it. So with that, let me turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Okay, good afternoon. I guess we're afternoon, yep. As Brian said, I'm Mike Dominguez. I'm the Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness. I would not apply to myself the very generous term as an expert that Brian offered, but I'm going to do my best. What we're going to talk about today is simple. It's a simple architecture, but it's just complicated to explain. So let me take you back in history. January 19th of this year, the Secretary implemented a policy that established very, very clear force management parameters that he set as goals for us to manage against. That's the 1 year deployed as an active component member. You should expect 2 years back home. And that if you were a member of the reserve components, you should expect to serve 1 year of involuntarily mobilized service, and then 5 years back home before being called again. Now, in that policy memo and then the announcements and the discussion Secretary had around that, he acknowledged that that was the goal, but that the national security and the demands of the national security may cause us at times to not be able to hit that target. And so he commissioned us to think about how you would recognize service above and beyond those established parameters. What we've come up with today, and what I'll explain to you today, is that program. I want to say, first off, though, that Secretary Gates and all of us honor the service of the men and women in uniform, particularly in these demanding times, and we just want to. They are always foremost in our thoughts. This program can't be viewed as being commensurate with the level of service that they offer to the nation. So in many respects, it's while it is substantive and it is tangible, it's also symbolic. It's part of our recognition that we're keeping them in our thoughts and we're trying to do something for them. And then when they do above and beyond, we want to acknowledge that in some small way. Now, lest I confuse you entirely, I want to make sure that you also understand that from 2004 on, we have been doing, as an established policy in the department, that when someone is extended in the combat theater, Iraq, Afghanistan, and certain limited geographic areas supporting Iraq and Afghanistan, so when you're extended there beyond 12 months boots on the ground, you've all heard that term before, we've been paying you $1,000 a month for tours that extend beyond 12 months boots on the ground. That policy continues. That is in place. It will continue in place, and it applies to the people who will be going over on 15-month tours. Okay, that policy that again practiced since 2004 recognizes the duration of your service in that theater. The policy we worked on very carefully and thoroughly with the Joint Chiefs and with the military department secretaries, in which we're announcing and discussing here today, deals with the frequency of your call forward. So this is about, how often we issue the call. Now the press release summarizes the recognition device that we've selected to use in this particular case in the terms of the frequency. And that device that we chose is administrative absence. That's the pass. You've all heard of the 3-day pass. 3-day pass is an admin absence. It's not limited to 3 days. The Secretary's authority to grant administrative absence is pretty well unfettered, which is one of the things that attracted us to this policy. He didn't need special statutory authority in order to do this, so he could give time off. And the second thing that attracted us to this device is that time off seemed to be a logical connection with getting the call frequently. We used you a lot. We used you more than it was expected. Why don't you take some time off once you get back? So that's why we've come up with the recognition device here for the frequency of our call to you in excess of these force management parameters is the admin absence. It applies to all of those active component service members who are deployed into the Iraq, Afghanistan, and those certain geographic areas from January 19th, 2007 forward. So if you're deployed or will be deployed, this policy now applies to you. And if you're a reserve component member, if you were involuntarily mobilized from January 19th forward, this policy applies to you. Now, this is where it gets complicated. The trigger for whether you begin to accrue administrative absence is whether you breach the policy parameters. So if you're active soldier or sailor, airman, marine, if you're active duty and you serve more than 1 year in and within a 36-month period, that's 1 up, 2 back, right? If you serve more than 12 months, on month 13, you begin accruing 1 day of admin leave for every month in excess of that. So in a 36-month block of time, right, you're expected to be deployed in this area only 12 months. If you go to 13, 14, 15, right, you get a day of admin absence from the Secretary for each one of those days. If you're a reserve component, member of the armed forces, and you are involuntarily mobilized, and let's assume a reserve component member of the armed forces was involuntarily mobilized 2 years ago, and then is mobilized today, right? That's more than 12 months in a 72-month period, 1 up, 5 back. Okay? So on the day I'm mobilized today, even though my last mobilization was 2 years ago, this policy applies to me. On this day that I am involuntarily mobilized, I look back, realized I served a year of involuntary service 2 years ago, but today is inside that 72-month period, so today I begin accruing 1 day of admin absence per month for every month I now stay on involuntary mobilization orders. So that's how it works. It's if you breach this 1:2 in active, 1:5 for reserves, the clock begins ticking, and you accrue admin absence. You at 7 months into it, right? You begin accruing 2 days, and if you get to 24 months, it becomes so that's you begin accruing 4 days. So it's an escalating scale that's appropriate because of this is one of frequency of our call to you. Now you're probably I hope that's clear to you, but at this stage, General Goldfein and I can take questions and help you clarify. We'll start over here.
A mechanics question and a philosophy question. On the mechanics, does this then apply to soldiers that have been extended in Iraq and Afghanistan that spent? So if their dwell time was broken prior to this, to January 19th,
if they're in there on January 19th.
in sometime in the previous 36 months?
Yeah, because it's a rolling window of 36 months. But if you have to be
It's not like the 36 months starts counting now and you have to wait for the end of 3 years.
No. If on January 19th you are on month 13, boom, it starts right there.
Okay, philosophically, I think people on the outside are going to look at this and go, big deal. You know, they were in a combat zone for an extra 3 months. They get 3 days off. You know, we get 3 days off all the time in the civilian world. How is this not going to be? Why limit it so much?
Well, this is what we do, right? It is the job. This is the job of the men and women of the armed forces, from which they do not shirk, and the volunteer force is extraordinary in being able to sustain the demands we have, the security of the nation has placed on it. Because as I said, look, you can't honor. I mean, this is in a measure. It's saying, look, we know what you're doing. We recognize what you're doing. We're proud of what you're doing. We're grateful for what you're doing, and so. I mean, if we start getting into why one, why not 10, why not 100, why not 1,000? Because it wasn't about that. This is about saying, look, I know this is extraordinary. I wish we didn't have to do this, but we have to do this. But at least you'll know that we're thinking about it, and we're thinking about you, and that's what this is about. We'll go that way, sir.
You say in the release that this can be used at the convenience of
Yes.
the soldier.
Yes.
But of course, it has to be approved by the commander. Now, as I understand,
Well, yeah, the exact moment you go, but your entitlement to it is approved by the secretary.
it has to be approved by the commander before you can take the time.
Yeah, before you can get away, right.
So when you get back from a deployment, as I understand it, you have a block leave of, let's say, 30 days. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
And then after that, for the most part, these units are training up to get ready to go back over. Now, what commander is going to let hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers off for 3, 4 more days while they're all training up to go back to Iraq or Afghanistan? Won't the commander, in many instances, say, well, I'd like to let you go for this nice leave plan, but we're all training up to go back over?
Well, I'll let General Goldfein talk about how an operational commander manages the spin-up. My point is this is a lifetime entitlement, or as long as you're in uniform, this is, for you, save for the reserve component. At the end of their mobilization time, they will get this, right? So for the reserves, they come back and they'll take this time. For an active component member of the armed forces, through your career, all you have to do is, before you check out of the armed forces, you can take this time. It stays with you until you use it. But Steve, you want to talk about what a commander does getting ready to go?
First of all, it's policy, so the commanders are going to implement it. In addition to that, the service secretaries have a range of options to themselves, and they have a number of programs underway, and the services work all of those. And just so as not to confuse, leave is a different capacity completely, handled in a different manner. And I think what we see with most of our units is when they get home, there's a certain amount of basic unpacking to do, and then fairly quickly, the commanders seem to all be universal in the way that they get folks out the door and reconnected with their families and other things that they need to do. So I would expect that you would see this happen fairly rapidly as folks come home, and because it's policy, it will be done.
I guess there was some thought that the compensation would be money as opposed to time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a feeling, is this what they want? They want time as opposed to money, or do you not?
Yeah, you got to go back to, this is what we do, right? And the cash piece of this is talked about up front when you join. And it's good, but most of us in the armed forces aren't here for the money. We're here for a whole bunch of different reasons. And that includes those men and women who are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so, again, this is a way of saying we're not doing this thoughtlessly. We're not doing this thanklessly. I mean, we acknowledge the service and the sacrifice. We know what we're asking of you. It's a conscious thing from us, and that's what this is about. And that's how.
And that's the message you're trying to send
Yeah.
them. But do you have a message from them? Have they indicated that they would have preferred money? I'm asking, do you know what they would have preferred?
Again, I think this is about the culture of our department, the culture of service, and this is a leadership thing. So it was up to us to figure out how to tell them we acknowledge what you're doing, and that's how we approached it. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to try both Pam and Pauline's question again because I'm not clear that, frankly, that we're getting the answer. Did you consider giving the troops money, either on the OSD side or the uniformed military side? Number one, did you consider giving them money? Do you have any input from the troops about what they would like? And to go back to Pam's question, is 1 day a month enough?
We considered an enormous range.
Did you consider money?
Money was one of the things that we absolutely did consider. Absolutely. We rejected it because we felt this was the more appropriate means of recognition, of communicating to the members of the armed forces. This is, we understand what we're asking of you. We know we're doing this. It's not mindless and thoughtless. So
what are you hearing from the troops? Why do you come to the policy decision that 1 day a month is more appropriate than money, and is 1 day enough?
Again, I tried to set the tone that said, we weren't trying to find some metaphysical balance between the service you were rendering and buckets full of gold or any other thing we could do for you, right? This wasn't about that, balance. This was about telling men and women of the armed forces that this is not, that we know when we ask you to do something extraordinary, we're conscious of it, we're aware of it, and we're mindful of that. So it's a conscious decision on our part. It wasn't.
What did your debate led you to come to the conclusion that 1 day is 1 day enough? And tell us what your thinking was behind that. Why did you come to that conclusion?
What do you think, Bill? Bill is my deputy for military. So
I'm Deputy Undersecretary for Military Personnel Policy.
Could you go?
Sure, I can. I'm sorry. With regard to a day of administrative absence versus money, the thing we're addressing here is frequency and intensity of service. What offsets intense frequency? The answer is respite. So when it came to a debate between cash, which produces a set of behaviors, or respite, that produces a set of behaviors of a break from the unit and the intensity of your exposure to the military environment, that was the reason for, at this moment, saying that respite is the behavior we would like to encourage. With regard to a day, if you took soldiers today, you're going to find, for the most part, that they'll trip the trigger on 12 out of 36 on their first month of deployment, because they've had a year on the past 3 for the most part for the career force. And by the middle of their tour, the 18th month, they'll be accruing 2 days. So typically they'll leave that tour with 18 days accrued. Now, for those 18 days, the value of those 18 days is that the leave that they've accrued, they won't have to take because they can use this pass. Is that helpful monetarily? Yes, because they have the option to sell back leave, which they otherwise would have had to take. Now they don't. And that's valued at anywhere from $150 to $250 a day. So if you take 30 days of leave, then you're looking at about $6,000. So there's a correlation between the two.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Well, you can't cash out admin absence. And again, I want to, the Bill reminded me of a point I made here, which is that the demand for frequency is the compensation. The logical thing is take some time off. You can use admin absence and allow your leave to accrue. All right, because the leave, controlled by statute, has specific things associated with it, so what this does is provide some choices and some flexibility. But the concept was, hard work, time off. Hard work, time off. Yes, sir.
Provide special pays and extra pays in other situations. For example, if someone is extended, they get $1,000 a month. I am not seeing the logic here in giving people time off instead of money. So I'd like you to explain, how is this even close to adequate?
I think I have already explained the reasoning. Time off for, hard use.
Range, you get $1,000 a month.
Existing policy, already in practice for several years, worthy policy to keep in place.
Well time, do you not get money?
Because we made that connection. I'm telling you the rationale that we used in our discussions at arriving at where we are. And that's what we have. So,
yes, you've got to be kidding me. This is not even close.
Can I just ask a clarification for a moment? The leave, they can cash out on leave, but they can't cash out on administrative absence, right? So in other words, they can use the administrative absence and then decide if they have 8 days of administrative absence to cash out on 8 days of leave.
Let me make clear, right? In the reserve components, when you demobilize, you either take your leave or cash it out. In the active component, you can take it or accrue it to, if you're enlisted at a point where you re-enlist, you can cash it out. If you're an officer, you do it at the end of your career. You can either take it or cash it out. So that's leave, annual leave, controlled by statute, how much you can accrue, how much you can roll over year to year. So very technical statute. Admin absence, secretary's discretion, how much to award and when and all that. And but there's not a cash alternative to admin absence. Both are time off. So you can use whichever one suits your circumstances at the time. And so that's...
No, that's helpful. Just a quick follow-up. Does your department, your office, have the budgetary flexibility to consider alternatives like additional cash bonuses or as an alternative?
The budgets and constraints on the budgets were not binding or determinative in this. And let me say on that, the Congress of the United States has been superb and excellent in terms of, if we needed something for the troops, they've given it to us, right? So what I said was, if we needed something, the Congress has appropriated it for us. So we weren't concerned about the budget. What we were concerned about is a recognition, a device for telling people, look, we know we're asking you to do something extraordinary, but something that was consistent with the ethos of service and something that was connected in a reasonable, logical way with, look, if we use you hard, we're going to give you some time off. Yes, sir. You've been trying to... Let me get right here.
One is, clearly you've done some modeling of how much this will be used. You have some sense of how many days off would be earned over the course of the next 6 or 8 months under this policy. That's one question.
Yeah.
And the second is, it was my understanding, maybe General could speak to this,
that there, when the Secretary announced this policy or announced the objective or his intent, that there was a lot of pushback from the Joint Chiefs, or at least their staffs, who felt that that any kind of compensation along these lines would somehow be, go against the grain of service or be maybe even insulting. I don't know, that's my word. But
Yeah.
Was that part of the debate? Why was it, maybe General could speak to that, because I understood that was part of the problem and some of the delay.
Well, let me say that the Secretary gathered lots of people around him to involve them in the discussion. Senior enlisted advisors were involved, not in direct discussion with the Secretary, but certainly through my office engaged them. The Joint Chiefs were deeply involved. The service secretaries were deeply involved. And we encouraged ideas. We encouraged debate and dialogue, and we had it in this case. And that's part of the reason that it took as long as we did, is that we had a healthy, rousing discussion of this policy to make sure that, that all the ideas were put on the table. And Steve, you want to?
Was there any truth to that? Were members of the uniformed members of the policy team, whatever, concerned that somehow compensating in this way would be against the grain of service?
Well, I'm not going to dissect the process we got here. And I don't think Steve wants to either. The point here is that the chiefs were deeply engaged in the discussion, as was my office, as were lots of other policy advisors to the Secretary. It was his decision after he listened and heard to all that advice. And that the chiefs, as a body, are extraordinarily comfortable. They are happy with where we are on this. They feel like this is the appropriate. Again, not a metaphysical balance between what we ask these people to do and what we're trying to do here. This is a signal to them when we ask them to go beyond those boundaries, that it's not mindless. We're thinking about you. We know it. We did it consciously, and we acknowledge your service through that. And we haven't done the modeling. And again, I think that goes back to that wasn't what it was going to cost and how much time people would accrue and stuff was not a determining factor. We're not worried about the expense. Thanks very much. And,
And then he said, what leverage do you have with the Russia? And then Skelton